Before we start today's show today, I want to thank our great new sponsor, MyPillow. That's right, MyPillow. They sent me one of those, Mike Lindell and the guys did, and I've been sleeping on it for a couple of weeks now, and I've never slept better. Hey, I've got a huge and busy schedule. Not only do I do the show, but we run an advertising agency. We help other podcasters with their shows throughout the country. We're constantly talking to folks, going to concerts. So my sleep is very important to me. So thanks to MyPillow. And remember, it's got a 10-year warranty guarantee, 60-day money-back guarantee. And yeah, you see MyPillow in stores like Walmart and Walgreens, but you can only get the premium pillows by calling MyPillow directly. So grab you one of those premium pillows. Call this number right here, 1-800-338-2330, 1-800-338-2330. Reference the code SGNP when you talk to them and say, hey, I want that premium pillow that Darren on SGNP has. It's that simple. They'll sell it to you, and it'll make life a whole lot better. So if you're having trouble sleeping, call MyPillow today, 1-800-338-2330. Use the code SGMP or go to their website, mypillow.com, and check them out. Hey, make sure you tell them SGNP sent you.
Welcome to one of the most listened to music news podcasts in the world, SGNP, with your host, Darren Sutherland. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, artists, and entertainers about their faith, family, and careers. This is information you will not find anywhere else on radio, web, or in a magazine, but only firsthand on SGNP.
And welcome again to Southern Gospel News Podcast, SGNP as we like to call it. Darren Sutherland and my good buddy, Dr. Jeff Steele. Jeff, how you doing today, my friend?
Well, this will be hard for people to understand in the time continuum that's out there, but we're actually recording this part of the show after the body of the show has been completed, and I'm on my way home from coming over there, and they don't even know what we did yet.
Now that you've totally confused everybody in the entire world, are you also selling 8-track tapes at your next concert along with cassette tapes and 3 for $20 still?
I talked about the time continuum, so you never can tell what you may do. We'll be in South Carolina and Georgia this weekend, and who knows what we'll have when we get there.
Hey, SGMP is here to do a few things for you folks. We're here to edify, encourage, inspire, and entertain. I want to reach out and throw a special reach out to one of our good friends who listens and has helped us promote this show all throughout America, Charlie Sexton and Linda Foster here in Georgia. They've helped us, Jeff, and they're good folks, and they both love the Lord, do they not?
They love us too, and they love Southern gospel music, and that's what a lot of us have in common. It's Southern gospel, country music, black gospel, contemporary Christian music. Well, we all just love gospel music, and Charlie's one of those folks, and I appreciate you mentioning him. I got to call him tomorrow about something anyway.
There you go. And hey, just to let everybody know, today we got a very special interview. Jeff, it's such a good interview. We're breaking it down in 2 parts and going to release a special show on Wednesday. These shows normally come out on Tuesday and Friday. Now we're up to 3 shows a week, and we've only been on for 2 weeks or a week. So heck, you think we'll be doing this every day before long? You never know.
We're not going to talk about numbers because we said we wouldn't, but I will. This is as close as I'll come to it. Literally, tens of thousands of people worldwide are downloading SGNP, and I'm flabbergasted and flummoxed and every other word you can think of that goes along with those two.
Well, from a marketing standpoint, let me just say this. We're the most listened to gospel music podcast in the world inside of 1 week. Easy. Okay,
and I think that's happened in a week. And
it's happened. Christian music, we're getting there. So anyway, we'll leave those accolades aside. We'll stay humble. We'll let Jesus bless us, and we'll move on through. We'll talk about everything from professional wrestling to catfish, Jeff. But we need to get to the interview we did today with one sweet, sweet lady, and it's going to be a 2-part story. And Jeff, it brought tears to my eyes and your eyes. Libbi Perry Stuffle, and she talks about Tracy and his sickness and his homegoing. And what a lot of people don't realize is he had his first heart attack at the height of their success.
Yes, and one of the reasons that it triggers so many emotions with me is because at a very important time in our lives and our career and everything, we were kind of paired with, or you can't call three groups a pair, but Tony Gore and Majesty, the Perrys and the Steels, during the decade of the 90s, the Perrys and the Steels were with the same record company, the same booking agency, and we just worked together. Every time I turned around, there were the Perrys, which our kids loved because Tracy was so good with the kids. And it just, you look back on a lot of that stuff and you realize there were days in the 90s we never talked about a time in the new century when Tracy would no longer be with us. And yet, Scripture says, take no thought for tomorrow, because we don't know if it's coming or not. And we really don't. We've never dreamed this was coming, but now it has come. It's played out right before our eyes. And today and the next one, we said Wednesday, you're going to hear maybe some details concerning that whole thing that you never heard before.
Yeah. And
Libbi was very candid with us and shared some things that, for me, now maybe nobody else will like it, but for me, I was riveted to my chair while she was talking, because she was the person that was there. I mean, she was there, and nobody can tell it like the person who saw it.
Intimate details. First, let's go take a break real quick. Talk to our buddy Tony Gore, Tony Gore's Barbecue and Grill up in Sevierville, Tennessee. Then coming up next will be our interview straight with Libbi Perry Stuffle right here on SGMP.
Come see what all the smoke is about at Tony Gore's Barbecue and Grill in the heart of the Smokies, Sevierville, Tennessee. Start off with T's loaded tater chips, some great sweet tea, then have some of his famous fried chicken, a pulled or sliced pork plate, or the best barbecue ribs in the Smokies. And oh, did we mention homemade mac and cheese? And dessert lovers, it's worth the trip just for a piece of cake. Voted the best barbecue in the Smokies, Tony Gore's Barbecue and Grill in Sevierville, Tennessee. And remember, gospel music fans, you never know who you'll see while at Tony Gore's Barbecue and Grill. For more information, visit them 24/7 at TonyGore.com.
If you've listened to gospel music in the past 25 years, you've saw what they used to call God's little people, the Perrys, explode in popularity and stature. With songs like my favorite, I Remember the Day, former number ones, Not Even a Stone, By Faith I Can Touch Him Now, I Rest My Case at the Cross, and I Wish I Could Have Been There, the fans' love for the Perrys continued to grow. Even after all the number one songs, the awards, tragedy and heartbreak first struck the group on August 11, 2010, when bass singer and Libbi Perry Stuffle's husband, Tracy, at the young age of 44, suffered cardiac arrest, had 5 blockages, and had a 10-hour open heart surgery. Later, in 2013, Tracy suffered a major stroke, which left him paralyzed and wheelchair-bound. However, through God's grace and provision, Tracy regained some of his capacities and again began to travel with his family. However, on February 4th of 2018, Tracy Stuffle, Libby's best friend and husband, passed away at the early age of 51. We're proud Libbi is here today joining us to talk openly and honestly about Tracy's health, what it was like to be so young and to take care of him with his daily needs while maintaining a home life, a business life, and a ministry of the Perrys. And even in the midst of all this trouble and all these problems, how the Lord triumphed in the midst of this tragedy. Let's go one-on-one today with one of the leading ladies of gospel music, Libbi Perry Stuffle, and answer some of these questions.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to SGNP, perhaps the fastest growing podcast in America and maybe even parts of the world, because we're now heard on every continent in the world and every state in the union. And my great things are going on with the SGNP show. My buddy Darien Sutherland is with us today. I'm Jeff Steele. Good to be in the hall with you. And our special guest today is a great friend of both Darien and mine, Libbi Perry Stuffle. with the Perrys. And boy, Libby's been through so much in the past, 5 years or so. And today, Libby, I heard it's snowing where you are, and it's springtime. That's almost ridiculous. But we also heard that for some reason, you normally put your Christmas tree up on October the 2nd, but you're thinking about dragging the tree out and putting it up today. Why in the world, first of all, would you be dragging it out today? And why do you put your Christmas tree up on October the 2nd? That may not have anything to do with the rest of the questions we ask, but I thought I'd ask it anyway.
We are on the road so much.
Yeah. And
especially the past 5 years, with Tracy's health the way it was, we never knew when he was going to be in the hospital, how long he was going to be there. And so Tracy and I, we just loved Christmas, and he loved the Christmas tree, and he didn't want a fancy Christmas tree. He wanted a country looking Christmas tree.
There you go.
And so sometimes we just cut all the lights off and leave the Christmas tree on and play Christmas music, just sit there and just, enjoy the tree.
Nice.
And so anyway, and like this past Christmas, when we put it up in October, Tracy was in the hospital the majority of October and November, and he finally got to come home on December the 8th. And so he was recovering, from the surgeries and stuff, which took a lot out of him. So he didn't really get to enjoy, the Christmas season like what he normally did. And so that's why I always put it up early, was mainly, for me and him to enjoy what we could.
The only thing I don't like about Tracy Stuffle, you know what that was?
That he was a Tennessee fan.
There you go. You preach it, girl.
Oh, my.
Well, you know what? We were married 30 years.
Yeah.
And he never converted me over. I'm from Georgia.
You're a bulldog.
And but I will have to say, after the day that he passed away, for the next 3 or 4 days, I did wear a Tennessee shirt, and just to honor him.
Yeah.
And so I still bleed red and black, but I may have to pull for the orange a little bit this year.
That's understandable.
Just to honor him.
That's understandable. Libby, 44 years of age. Tracy was a young man. I saw him a lot of times in concerts. Our listeners had saw him a lot of times. And for the people that hadn't saw Tracy ever in person, but maybe they had saw him on video, YouTube, somewhere, was a jovial, happy individual, playing jokes, laughing, cutting up, loved by everyone in the industry. But at 44 years of age, I believe I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, he has a massive heart attack, cardiac arrest, 5 blockages, a 10-hour surgery. Let's go back to that day. What happened? What were y'all doing? Where were you at? What was going on?
Well, Tracy had been sick probably a month before that with just little issues here and there, and thinking that it was a hernia, and his doctors was treating him as such. And but that particular morning, my niece and nephew had come in from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, August 10th, and so I had planned on taking them to Nashville Shores, which is a water park. Mm-hmm. And so I got up that morning, and Tracy was still asleep. And so I told him, I said, I'll be back in a little bit. I said, I'm going to take the kids to the water park. And Jared, our son, was in the bed sick with sinuses. And so the water park's probably an hour from where we live. And so probably, I don't know, I was probably 10 minutes from the park. And Bill Bailey calls me. Mm-hmm. And he said, which is our manager and stuff. And so he said, have you talked to Tracy? And I said, no. I said, not since I left home. I said, I've been gone about 45 minutes. And he said, well, you probably need to call him. And I said, why? I said, what's going on? Well, just call him. And I'm like, okay. So I got off the phone and I called him, and I said, what's going on? And he started crying. And Tracy Stuffle never cried unless it was a spiritual moment.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, it's too early in the morning for him to be having a spiritual moment. And so I asked him, I said, why are you crying? And he said, Libby, he said, something's not right. He said, I'm hurting down my arms all the way into my hands. He said, I've been nauseated. And I said, it's probably your heart. And I said, go in the kitchen and take you a couple of baby aspirin. And so I told him, I said, keep me on the phone. And so he kept me on the phone. He couldn't even open the aspirin bottle. His hands were so weak. And so I told him. And Tracy,
let me interrupt you for our folks out there that never met Tracy. Tracy wasn't a little bitty guy. I mean, by no means. He wasn't a giant of a man, but he wasn't a little fella. He had a little meat on him, you know.
Yeah. At that time, he was 324 pounds.
Okay.
And so I told him, I said, well, go in the bedroom and wake Jared up and get him to come in there. And I said, and we'll get somebody there to, call the ambulance or something. And he said, I don't want to scare Jared or anything like that. So I said, well, hang on. I said, let me get a hold of our best friend that lived just right down the road. And so I called him and I said, go pick Tracy up. And I said, take him to the ER. I said, I think he's having a heart attack. And he said, Libby, he said he won't go. He said, I've tried to get him to go 2 or 3 times in the last month. And I said, he will go now. I said, take him. And so he took him, and he didn't have a massive heart attack. He had a light heart attack. Mm-hmm. And so he was at the local hospital here in Gallatin. And so they came out and got me, and they were like, because I met them at the hospital, and they said, we're going to have to transport him to St. Thomas West, and said he's going to have open heart surgery. And so they said the only reason that we're not sending him by helicopter, he said, it's because we don't have one.
Wow.
And so it was that bad.
Wow.
And so they transported him to St. Thomas, and because of, we didn't know at the time he was diabetic.
Okay.
And they kept coming into the room saying, okay, Mr. Stuffle, are you a diabetic? And he's like, no. And another person would come in and they would say, Mr. Stuffle, are you a diabetic? And he, no. And so finally, the diabetes doctor come in, and he said, Mr. Stuffle, he said, I know, he said, you've been telling the nurses and stuff that you're not a diabetic. He said, but you are a severe diabetic.
Wow.
He said, your A1C is 12.8.
Wow.
And normal then at that time was 6.5.
Right.
Man.
So they had to get his sugar under control first. So that delayed the surgery. He actually had surgery on the 13th, Friday the 13th, top it all.
Yeah.
And but the surgeon, when the surgery lasted, was only supposed to be maybe 6 hours, and 7 hours at the most, because they try to allow an hour and a half per bypass.
Right. He had 5, right?
Yes. Well, he had 5, but they were only able to fix 4.
Wow.
Because the 5th one, there was no place to bypass into.
Wow.
What's going through?
And
What's going through your mind at this point, Libby? I mean, here you are, a young lady. You know, you've been married 20-something years at that time. Tracy's your husband. What's going through your mind? And your husband sitting in there at such a young age with cardiac arrest, knowing that, you got this bypass surgery, knowing you got fans on the road, you're thinking business, you're thinking Jared, you're thinking everything. What's Libby thinking right now?
I was sitting there thinking, okay, there's a big lifestyle change coming, and it's going to be left up to me to make sure that it happens.
Yeah.
And during the time that we were in the waiting room waiting, one of the nurses came to me that was working the desk there in the waiting room. She said, we have a problem. And I said, with Tracy? And she said, no. She said, everything's going good with that. She said, but he is shutting our phone lines down. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, we have had over 400 calls in the last 2 hours. And she said, we're telling people that he's not in our system. She said, even though he is, she said, because she said, we can't handle this type of call volume,
Wow.
For one person. And she said, you need to go to KarenBridge.com and create a Karen Bridge page. And she said to keep your family, friends, and fans updated there. She said that way, she said they can, not call the hospital.
Right.
And so that's what we did.
Yeah, when they life flighted me to Huntsville Hospital, we had almost the same situation to come up, and they couldn't ask me anything because I was in the neurological intensive care unit, and they came out and told Sherry, they said, you're about to shut our phones down. For the sake of all the rest of the patients, can you go to get one of those pages and have folks be able to go there and find out, because you're going to literally make people in the hospital where they can't even get in or out on the phone. It's just not fair.
When they got done with the surgery, the surgeon came out.
Yeah.
And he talked to the whole family, and he said this was the worst heart for a man his age that I've ever operated on.
Wow.
Incredible.
Wow.
And he looked me in the eyes, and he said, if he doesn't lose 100 pounds, he will never live to see 50.
Wow. I've heard that
and
before.
He said it's not a, I hope you can lose it, or, good luck losing it. He said it's a must.
Yeah.
So,
how'd he lose it, Libby?
Huh?
How'd he lose it? He comes out of the heart surgery. Yeah.
When he got to a regular room, I sat down and I told him, I said, Tracy, I said, I told him what the doctor said, the surgeon. And he said, I know. He said, God's been dealing with me, about getting my health in check. And I told him, I said, I will do whatever I have to do. I said, the weight is going to come off. And I said, because I want you to be around.
Yeah.
And so we got home and we got him settled in. And so I went to Kroger's.
Yeah.
And I had been, while he was in the hospital, 8 days. So I started Googling and researching, low fat, low carb,
all that fun stuff,
sugar, everything.
Stuff. Yeah.
And
stuff we don't eat in the fellowship hall, in other words.
No.
On the bus.
And stuff that's very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
And that's my whole big deal with our government is, they want to complain and fuss about people being overweight and being obese and stuff. And I'm like, well, why don't you make the food industry charge more for junk food and charge less for healthy food?
Exactly that.
And you might see a reversal.
You never know. You never know.
But anyway, I got in the middle of Kroger's.
Yeah.
and I had a nervous breakdown.
Wow.
I stood there and I cried for at least 30 minutes. Mm. And I just started.
How old are you at this time, Libby? I know Tracy's 44. How old were you?
47.
Okay.
And so I just started praying, and I was like, God, I've got to I've got to help him do this, but this is going to require a huge adjustment, a huge change. And I said, you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to give me knowledge and wisdom to choose what he needs, and
what he can afford.
Because when you go from eating fried foods, Big Macs, French fries, chicken tenders, all this, mashed potatoes, macaroni,
comfort food,
hot wings, whatever,
to eating salads and grilled vegetables and grilled salmon and
turkey.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I gathered myself up, and I said, okay, I can do this. And I was in the grocery store 3.5 hours.
Wow.
And I learned that day that you don't buy anything out of a box or a can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because anything that's in a can is going to be high in sodium. It's going to be, and if it's not high in sodium, it's going to be high in sugar.
No doubt.
And so anyway, I cooked. I bought me a George Foreman grill.
Good.
And put on the bus. Mm-hmm. And we ate on the bus every day for 1 solid year.
Wow.
I cooked every meal on the bus.
Wow.
And when we were at home, we would go out to eat to Old Charlie's one time a week, and we would.
No potato soup, right? No yeast rolls.
Oh,
right?
No. We would get a salad with the dressing on the side, and he would dip the salad into the dressing to get just a tiny bit. And because I let him have regular salad dressing.
Right.
And because fat-free salad dressing is awful.
It's horrible.
And so, I said, if you dip it, just put a little tiny bit on there, then it won't be so bad. And we'd get grilled salmon with grilled vegetables. And then I would come home, and I would make him, he loved banana pudding. And so I would make him a sugar-free, fat-free banana pudding.
And I know he was appreciative of that, at least the effort anyway. I'm just riveted as Libby is telling us about Tracy's cardiac arrest and the days that followed that. And, of course, we'll get to the stroke, which came a couple of years later. But right now, Darren, we've got to take a quick break, and we'll be back. This is SGNP.
SGNP is brought to you by Kia. Join SGNP this summer for the Kia Summer Nights Concert Series, a free concert at select local Kia dealers. The first concert is June 14th with the McCameys at Julio Jones Kia in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
The God on the mountain is still God in the valley.
It's the Kia Summer Nights Concert Series, starting June 14th with the McCameys at Julio Jones Kia in Tuscaloosa. Part of Kia, America's best value summer event. America loves Kia and gospel music. It's the Kia Summer Nights Concert Series, absolutely free. Brought to you by SGNP and Julio Jones Kia in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, June 14th.
Well, Darren, it was, we were in Pigeon Forge, staying with our buddy Tony Gore up there, and we went by the restaurant. Sherry and I did. We were in our own car, and our kids, they're all adults now, they had come up, and we were visiting with them in the car in the parking lot. And our oldest daughter, Christy, looked through the back window, and she said, that's Tracy and Libbi Stuffle eating on the front porch of Tony Gore's restaurant. Well, sure enough, I looked around, and it was. And I was a little bit apprehensive because I didn't want to interrupt their private time together. And I also didn't know exactly how to approach Tracy, I hadn't seen him in a while, and I didn't know what his current physical status was, and I quite frankly didn't know what to do. So I walked up behind him and I said something to somebody else that was there at the restaurant, and from behind him, he heard my voice, and I'll never forget, Tracy said, that's Jeff Steele back there. Well, of course it was. That was me. I had no more apprehension. We sat down and began to eat with Tracy and Libby, and oh my, how the memories did roll. See, back in the 90s, we were with the same booking agency, the same record label, and the real package was Tony Gore and Majesty, the Steeles, and the Perrys. I mean, we were everywhere. We tore up South Georgia and Florida and South North Carolina. We were everywhere together. It was not unusual for us to be with them literally every week somewhere, sometimes 2 and 3 nights in a week. And we sat down and we began to reminisce. We told stories. We laughed and joked and carried on like nobody's business. And I don't know how it happened. Don't recall all the intimate details. But at one point that night, Tracy had said he sure would like to have some of Tony's banana pudding. Now, that's not the kind that Libby was talking about a minute ago when she was talking about low-fat banana pudding and all that kind of stuff. This is the real deal here. He wanted some. So in true Tony Gore fashion, and he's a great sponsor of this podcast too, Tony went in and made Tracy an entire banana pudding. Well, while he's making a banana pudding, everybody just sort of disappeared. It's just me and Tracy sitting at the table. I think Sherry and Libby went off to do something, but it's just me and Tracy sitting there. Well, Tony brought that banana pudding out and sat it down. And I put a little bit over into a bowl for Tracy to eat. I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he said, that's not as much as I like, but it's more than Libby will let me have. And I said, well, Tracy, Libby's not here right now. So I scooped him up a little bit more. And then because of his physical limitations, he was unable to feed himself the banana pudding. And I did something that night I'd never done in my life outside of our own children. I'm sorry. I got a spoon and I began to feed Tracy his banana pudding. It was a very humbling experience for me because I'd never seen my friend in this condition, and I never had the opportunity to pick up a spoon, dip it into his bowl, and to feed him banana pudding. Even in his latter years, Tracy never was a big emotional guy, so he just made fun of me. He said, "You're not feeding it to me fast enough." So I tried to feed it to him a little bit faster, tried to keep up with his appetite. Apparently, he had not had banana pudding for a while. And as I sat there and fed him that night, I just was reminded of so many times when we'd been together and sung together and eaten together and run the roads together. I remember one night we were in Knoxville. We were going east and he was going west, and we saw him across the interstate. I got on the CB radios about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I asked him, I said, "Where's a good place to park and sleep for the night?" And Tracy got back on the CB and he said, "Oh, you can't make money sleeping." And of course, he was right. But man, the reason this is so riveting to me is because, quite honestly, Libby's giving us some details in this interview that I was unaware of. I just never heard some of the real nuts and bolts things that happened, and it's been tremendous, and we appreciate her so much being on the program with us this week.
You're right, Jeff. Libby gave us some nuts and bolts in that interview that were tremendous, very, very tremendous. I mean, just good stuff. And the interview is so riveting that we're going to do a special release podcast Wednesday evening, Thursday morning, something like that, where she talks more about the stroke and all kind of stuff. Jeff, it was just. It blew my mind. And you're personal friends with them. I know them. I've known Libby for 20 years. I've known Tracy for 20 years. What she didn't tell you in the interview, Jeff, and this is kind of funny, is the night I was there, I was the promoter of the concert the night they hired, what's her name? The little blonde-headed girl. Oh, man.
Nicole
Watts, yeah. Matter of fact, you're going to laugh. They tried out Nicole Watts, Greg Bentley, who tries out with everybody, and one other girl that night. Have you ever tried out Greg Bentley, by the way?
No, I haven't. Probably just because he's so far away. It cost him a pretty good penny to come here.
That's right. But, Jeff, hey, man, thanks again. It's a great interview with Libbi, and she's a dear friend. And you know what?
Well, I'll tell you something. We used to work with them all the time. I mean, it was just, I often tell people, I said, that was our decade of the 90s. Tony Gore and Majesty, the Steels, and the Perrys. And Bill Bailey was right at the heart of so much of that. And, of course, he ended up being their manager and pastors a great church down in Bradenton, Florida. And it just, you and I talked about Dusty Rhodes last week and how much an intricate part of our lives that he was, even though we never knew him personally. I knew him, but not on an intimate level. But people can get into your life that way, and that decade of the 90s was sure one of those times for us. Of course, I'm on the way home now, so from the interview itself. So I'm sitting here thinking back over some of the stuff she said, and I'm thinking, oh man, how can somebody go through something like that?
Well, stick around for episode 2, folks. It's going to be a great interview. It'll be downloaded into your iTunes project. Now, remember, ask your children, how do I download, or your grandchildren, how do I download a podcast? Your children or your grandchildren?
They'll know.
Yeah.
They'll know what we don't know.
They'll know what you don't know. By the way, did your son Brad tell you how to download the podcast yet?
He's in the midst of that. He's on DDP yoga right now, and he's lost almost 30 pounds doing that.
There you go.
And he wants to really lose down because DDP told me put him on an ad if he'd lose that, and he's going to lose it. So
there you go.
That's exciting too.
Jeff, before we leave,
need to sponsor our program.
Yeah, before we leave this show, I just want to tell the listeners and the people all around the world, thank you for listening to Southern Gospel News Podcast, SGMP, Southern Gospel News Podcast. So many have taken the time to look us up on the internet, and they've gone and Googled Southern Gospel News Podcast. Nick gave me the numbers on that, and I was blown away. So many have searched us out on podcast and through their iTunes or their Google devices and found us. Folks, I promise you this, you can get a lot of good information out of podcasts, not just this one here, Jeff, but you can listen to ministries and all kind of things out there. And we look forward to being a leader in the gospel music and the culture world, promoting the good name of Jesus. Do we not?
Well, and last week on the Jason Crabb interview, just to let you know that we're as much of an audience for our own program as anybody else. I quoted Jason in my message yesterday, something he had said on the SGNP, the podcast show. So listen, you may slip up and get blessed if you're not careful.
You may do that, no doubt. And remember, go to our Facebook page. The Facebook page has been up for 1 week, Southern Gospel News Podcast. Jeff, let me ask you this question. We asked this on SGMP's Facebook page the other night, and over 100 responses. On Friday night, do you eat steak, fried chicken, fried catfish, or ribs? What do you prefer?
Yes. All of them if I can get them.
Well, let me tell you something real quick. The Alabama and Mississippi Board of Tourism, which you've had to promote in your livelihood, is mad that you didn't say catfish. You realize that, don't you?
Well, I was trying to get to the catfish thing. I really am a big catfish person. The problem is Mississippi has so many great catfish houses that once you get out of Mississippi, it's not there aren't any good ones anywhere else, but in Mississippi, in one city, you might have 3 or 4 to choose from, and they're all great. When you come to Alabama, one thing I've had to do is find the good fish houses, but in Mississippi, they'll find you.
There you go. Little something I'll tell you about Alabama, and we got to get out of here. Do you know it's an Alabama state law that in any restaurant that serves fish, they've got to tell you where those fish come from, even Captain D's?
Absolutely.
It's funny.
Absolutely.
When you walk in Captain D's, it says fish flown in from Vietnam. Man.
Well, and the reason they do that is because there are people that have allergies to fish from certain parts of the world, and man, that could be fatal to somebody if they don't have that information.
I love me some
But in
Captain D's.
Mississippi, it's all Mississippi pond-raised catfish. And my goodness, is it good.
Hey, you know what? You've never lived until you get a media rep calling on you, wanting to take you out for lunch, and they're all foo-foo and nice and wanting to take you to an expensive restaurant, and they say, where you want to go? And you look at them and say, Captain D's. You've never lived until that happens, Jeff, and their face just dropped. I'm not eating at Captain D's. They won't tell you because they want to sell you. They just don't know what to order when they get there. My friend, thank you for being a part of this episode. The next episode, part 2 of our interview.
Wait a minute. Hold it.
Okay.
Are you just going to talk all night, or do I get to talk?
You get to talk. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you, on my radio show all those years ago, goes all the way back in the 80s, I did a bunch of live commercials for different sponsors, and each one was kind of exclusive, except for the catfish houses. I had 2 catfish houses on my show, and people would call me on live interview programs. They say, we want to know which one's your favorite. Is it Sudi's Catfish, or is it South Fork Catfish? And every time I'd say, that's like asking me which one of my children is my favorite. They're all my favorites, so don't try to pin me in that corner.
There you go. The next corner I'm going to pin you in, Jeff, and I want to show an answer in the next show, and we'll bring it up. And we asked this question on SGMP Facebook page. Does your wife clean fish? All righty?
No.
No
one in this house cleans fish.
Oh man, I appreciate you, Jeff. We'll be on here. We got to work on the next episode. And folks, if you want to hear the remaining part of this interview, listen to it. It's a great interview, great information, and we're going to hear about Tracy's battle and Tracy's homecoming and the joy Libbi now sees, even though her beloved husband and the bass singer of the Perrys is going to be with the Lord. Thanks again, Jeff. It's been a great show.
Yes, it has.
And always remember, Jeff, we need to do 4 things to make every day possible. Edify, inspire, encourage, and entertain. That's what we hope you get out every time you listen to SGMP. And always remember, what's wrong with living right anyway?
SGNP is excited you chose to listen today. If you'd kindly leave a remark and rating in the podcast remarks section, we surely would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or family member. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, SouthernGospelNewsPodcast.com. And remember the Kia Summer Nights concert series, all 100% free, coming to a town near you. For more information on the concert series or to advertise your products, services, concert event, or new project on SGNP and reach a 100% guaranteed number of people in your area, call Tim Newton at 770-874-3200 or email him today, tnewton@bgadgroup.com. Let us geo-target our ads for you, something radio nor magazine can do.